Good evening. I will now call the December 1st work session of the Lane Community College Board of Education meeting to order. In order to continue conducting meetings in a manner that will help to combat the spread of COVID-19 and promote the safety and well-being of our community, this meeting is being held remotely. I'd like to remind board members and staff to keep themselves muted and to use the hand raise feature when you would like to speak. Please do not use the chat. That's reserved for tech communication. Board members are also asked to have their video turned on so you are visible to the viewing public. We're going to go ahead and take the roll. And Deborah, are you able to do that for us this evening?
Sorry, just one moment.
I'm here. I can take it.
Oh, great. Thanks, Tammy.
Great. Okay, so Tammy will take the roll for us. Go ahead, Tammy. Thank you.
You're welcome. Holly Johnson.
Here.
Angela Van Kraus.
Present.
Mike Eister.
He just waved. He's here.
Yeah. Austin Fulnaggy.
Here.
Steve Mattel.
Here.
And Rosie Pryor.
Here.
And
Lisa Fragula.
present. Thank you. Thank you, Tammy.
You're welcome.
So Donna is not with us this evening. She's enjoying an evening off to go to a musical. So I'm really glad she's taken the time to do that. We will start our meeting with the acknowledgement of Homeland, our land recognition, and Holly Johnson is going to read that for us tonight. Holly?
Thank you, Chair Fragula. We begin our meeting with the acknowledgement that the land we are on is the traditional homeland of the Kayupuya people. The Kayupuya were stewards of this very land for over 14,000 years before their traditional way of life was forever disrupted and destroyed. We start our meeting with the humility and reverence for the original inhabitants of the Kayupuya. And my personal reflection is when I was employed at the University of Oregon, they were in the process of building a new dorm and asked for input on the naming of the new living quarters. And I'm super excited that I was part of that process. And that it was then brought to my attention about the Kayupuya. I'm honored to live and enjoy the space that the Kayupuya has laid before my time, but the outdoor space is awesome, and I always keep them in mind when I'm camping and fishing. Thank you
very much, Holly. All right, so I would like to adopt the agenda with flexibility, if without objection. Is there any objection to adopting the agenda with flexibility? Okay, seeing none, we've adopted the agenda with flexibility, and we're going to move on to our first discussion item for the evening, which is our board policies. Michael Blade.
Thank you, Chair Fraglo, and thank you for moving me to the front of the line because I'm trying to get to that same that same musical that Donna's attending. Brett, would you mind pulling up the crosswalk, please? So the first policy of the evening, by the way, we've moved on from the 2000s. We're into the 3000s now, so we're making some progress.
Exciting.
Yeah, exciting, right? Gotta celebrate those little victories. The first policy is OCCA Board Policy 3100, which is organizational structure. This simply directs the president to establish org charts, which designate reporting responsibilities within the college. This is one that we don't currently, LCC doesn't currently have a policy. I would say that there is a policy 510, that does give the board discretion over the sort of the organization of the college, and I don't think that's what we're getting at here. What we're getting at here is simply designing org charts throughout the college and directing the president to do so that we have clear delineation of who reports to whom. So just wanted to point that out.
Great. Any questions or comments for Michael Blade on board policy 3100? Austin?
So I just wanted to clarify essentially. So it is not removing the authority of the board to approve the organizational structure that exists in board policy 510. It is we get an organizational chart made by the president and then we approve it. Is that the dynamic that's going on there, or?
Yeah, I would say that in general, and I haven't been here that long, so I'm not sure if past practice is different. What you would normally see is the board would approve the upper management org chart. So we're talking about the VPs, the provosts, and how they report to the president. And then departmental board org charts probably wouldn't come to the board. You could see them. You could certainly request to see them, but they wouldn't be an approval. The board wouldn't approve all of the org charts throughout the organization. For example, in public safety, how Lisa Rupp has her folks reporting to her and to whoever reports to her. If people report to them, you probably wouldn't be approving those, but you certainly could see them and have input if you wanted to.
But just to clarify, the language that is being referred to in board policy 510 is approve an academic and administrative structure or organization to which it delegates the responsibility for effective and efficient management. And I see Marge has got her hand up, and then we'll go to Rosie.
Yeah, just a point of clarity. It's not that I bring you a chart. It's not about the chart as much as it's about the structure, as Lisa just said. So clearly, if I wanted to hire a provost or something at the high level, I'd have a discussion with you all. But that the chart is just something very operational, but it's the structure of the chart. If we didn't have a finance vice president, right? You would be able to say to me, Marge, why don't you hire one, or so, like that. So just point of clarity, the boxes and the squares aren't so much as important as the structure.
Rosie, and then Mike.
I guess my question is about what is the rationale for memorializing this in a board policy? I mean, it seems like a natural thing to do to create organizational charts, but I'm unclear why we need a policy to that effect. It just seems like more overkill.
Michael Blade, did you want to answer that?
It's accreditation related. That's, so if you look at NICU standard 2.A.4, it talks about having organizational charts. So, I believe that's why the OCCA folks put it in there.
I think it would have been useful to put that notation in your crosswalk. I think you did in at least one or more other cases. So thank you. That was helpful.
Yeah. It usually is right under the board policy heading in the crosswalk. It's on my copy that I printed out.
Marge, did you have a response? And then we'll go to Mike. Mike?
Yeah, I just kind of echo Rosie. We obviously have to have it if it's part of the accreditation, but I think the board needs to give the president as much latitude as we can with this. There's no need for the board to get deep into this at all, I don't think.
Marge?
Yeah, it isn't so much an approval, it's that we have them. NUQ wants to make sure we're being transparent. When I look at other schools, the first thing I do is I go to their website and about the college, and I look for where their org structure is, because it's how we communicate with the outside world. So I think in that sense, it's transparency. What if a board didn't know about and understand that? So I guess it's just a way to make sure you're being transparent to the public.
And from what I understand from Michael Blade, it does not in any way conflict or invalidate board policy 510. Okay, Angela.
I think in my initial reading, and this is one of the questions I asked in advance, was about the last line that says organizational charts are subject to review by the Board of Education. I understand that that does not imply that they're subject to approval, but it sort of feels like it's verging on implying that they're subject to approval, which I don't love. I'm wondering if we can just strike that line, or if we can adjust that line in some way that makes it really clear that, org charts certainly will be shared with the Board of Education, but it's the president's job to structure them and manage them.
Michael Blade.
Yeah, I would hesitate to strike that line. I think what that's saying is that the board has the oversight to review these and make adjustments as necessary. And I think that's something that NICU is going to want to see. So this is one where I would say the lawyers put that language in there specifically for a purpose. And I would advise you strongly not to strike that language. I don't think it's approval, although I do think that if you saw one and didn't like it, let's face it, you could you could make that change, I'm sure.
Any other comments or questions? Okay, so I'm going to suggest, based on the conversation so far, that we move this to the consent agenda, particularly based on some of the feedback from legal counsel. Okay, so let's go ahead and move us on to OCCA Board Policy 3200.
So 3200 is about accreditation, and there is a current board policy 010, that deals with accreditation. And I didn't know this, but prior to the meeting, Brett let me know that this was something that was inserted prior to 7 years ago, prior to our accreditation visit then. So for any of you that have been on the board, I don't know if Rosie's been around that long or not, but for those of you who might have, you might remember that. So basically, I think these policies overlap fairly well. Clearly 010 has a little bit more specificity. I would say that 3200 is much more of a broad, granting sort of the president some broad latitude to make sure that, all the accreditation standards are met or exceeded, and that, the various reports, et cetera, are provided in a timely fashion and the board sees them, and things like that.
Comments or questions? Okay, I'm not seeing any. So seeing none, I'd like to suggest that we can move this to the consent agenda for adoption. Okay. Give it a pause there. All right, I'm going to go ahead and move us on to OCCA Board Policy 3225.
So this one has to do with institutional effectiveness. So this is right in the wheelhouse of Dr. Plott. This is a policy that provides some guidance to the college to make sure that we have satisfactory goals, and that we have a mechanism to regularly assess the effectiveness of how the college is meeting those goals. And, that takes many, many different, it comes in many different forms, I guess. And so Dr. Plott provides a lot of information on various subjects, but that's this policy is providing that basically the college has goals there are ways to assess those and whether or not we're meeting those goals and providing that information to the board. And there is no current policy around institutional effectiveness.
Hey, I have Angela followed by Austin.
Thank you. So I guess my question is, I know I asked in advance a question that was pretty dumb. But the question that I was trying to ask is slightly less dumb, I think. So when I think of an assessment, I think of like the board self-assessment that we go through. I think of like KPIs, this sort of thing. It's not clear to me that we are actually assessing institutional effectiveness right now. Like, we're receiving reports on it regularly, yes, but I'm not super clear how the board itself assesses institutional effectiveness. And so I'm not sure how we would demonstrate that we have complied with our policy. And so I'm wondering if assessment is necessary, and if so, you know, is that part of current practice that I'm just missing it in my memory right now? Or is it something that we need to add to our practice?
Marge, did you want to respond to that?
So we've been doing, since I came, we've been doing something called mission fulfillment, and it's on our website. And I don't know if you remember, Jen used to bring that to the board regularly, but in the past 2 years, we've really been focused heavily on writing the self-study. So basically you take a look at where you've been, and your self-study is your assessment. So we focused on the major assessment of how far we've come in mission fulfillment over the past 7 years. So moving forward, board, you should be then receiving, and I'll let Richard talk, regular reporting on how we're doing on for the next 5 to 7 years. And what boards do is they use their strategic plan. So we're going through that right now. We did the self-study. We had just a very few, remember, 2 recommendations, but it's your strategic plan that the mission fulfillment report will come from. So Richard, you want to step in there too?
Yes, ma'am. Thank you. Good evening, board members. The KPIs will be developed from the strategic plan as it's vetted either in December or January in the upcoming board sessions. What we will be doing is looking at the mission fulfillment indicators, aligning them with the board goals that have been approved for FIT. Then the second part of that is to establish the key performance indicators for the storyboard of progress. We will be looking at the objectives set forth and the strategies to look at the goal attainment and make sure that we are on the path to fulfill what we would say we do, both in our strategic plan and our mission. And that is what we use for the overall 7-year report to our accreditor. And it's time to reboot the cycle since we just finished this prior 7 years. So again, as you approve the plan, we will begin immediately aligning the MFIs that we have and creating the key performance indicators for a progress report on a routine basis for the board.
Austin?
Sometimes Alt-A doesn't unmute. Anyway, I'm actually really supportive of this policy. I think this is really, I think it's good to establish the institutionalization of our goals and a process for that and a policy around that. So I'm really supportive of this.
You, Rosie?
Thank you. I didn't realize I hadn't muted myself after the last time. Sorry about that. You know, I think Angela has an interesting point here. Over the course of the years, boards have talked about the feasibility of having some sort of a dashboard of consistent measures that could be looked at. And perhaps it would merit some discussion at a subsequent board retreat. Now that we do have a strategic plan and a set of goals that the board has agreed on, perhaps we could talk with administration about the feasibility of developing some kind of a dashboard that board members, a simple dashboard that board members could look at on some timely basis. I've come to the conclusion that the community college is a different breed of cat when it comes to measuring things. The nature of measuring outcomes in classes and so on is a little harder than measuring how many loans we've made this month. So I've been a little stumped personally over the years of how to approach this, but I do think Angela has an interesting point that we ought to talk about at some point as a board.
Richard?
Yes, ma'am. We are working on that right now. So this will be like the fourth set of dashboards I've created for strategic plans and boards of education. We will be garnering input from the board members and from the folks providing the services for us to measure. And that is a part of what you approved this summer for our business intelligence model.
So I'm hearing a lot of support for this policy. I'm wondering if folks feel the need to add language that reflects all of the KPIs, strategic plan, MFIs, progress report, dashboard, or just knowing that we have those tools at our disposal is enough. Okay, see some agreement with that. Okay, great. Thank you. Okay, so we don't need to add language. So I'm going to suggest that we move this policy forward to the consent agenda. Okay, going on to board policy 3250.
Okay, so this one is institutional planning, and I just want to, I had a conversation or email conversation with Austin Fulnaghi about this. I want to make sure that we're very clear. This is sort of a 35,000 foot level direction to the president to implement, some system of planning to support institutional effectiveness. And sets kind of a minimum level of planning with respect to plans that are going to be provided to the board and approved by the board. And so this doesn't, so one of Austin's concerns, and I totally understand where he was coming from, is this somehow undermining the shared governance system? And I don't think it does. I think it actually, they dovetail really well together. If you look at the policy in the third line, well, second and third line, it says the LCC has and implements a broad-based, comprehensive, systematic, and integrated system of planning, and quote, that involves appropriate segments of the college community and is supported by institutional effectiveness. And I think that's where shared governance folds right in there, because policy 325 is going to put shared governance in a role to involve itself in developing some of these plans, not all of them, but some of them for sure. And so I think these two really work well together, actually. So anyway, there isn't a specific institutional planning policy that this one overlaps. It certainly wouldn't revoke 325 or do anything to damage 325, I don't believe. So that's, yeah.
Questions or comments? So I'm gonna kind of ask the same thing I've heard Rosie ask before. I don't see that this is accreditation related or connected to a new Q standard. I just see that it's good practice. And so is it something that we absolutely need to include? I mean, I know this is something that we do and we're committed to. Do we need this in our policy library? Michael Blade?
Yeah, it's good practice. I don't, if you did away with this one, I don't think the college is going to collapse or anything. I think you're right. We already do this. This is just, putting it on paper to make sure that it continues to be done year after year. So I don't think this one is it would be any kind of damage to the college if we didn't have it.
Okay. Austin?
And also, just to clarify, it doesn't take out the planning aspects of shared governance either, correct? Okay.
Correct.
Anyone else? So, Angela, go ahead.
Thank you for your comment, Lisa. I think it's really good to keep the perspective of, making sure that we have what we need and nothing more. I rather like the idea of this policy. I like that it sort of clarifies what plans, the list of 7 that we can expect. I think it's a useful tool in a time of transition to have things sort of well documented as well. So I sort of like it.
Great. Thank you for that feedback, Marge.
In preparation for having you all review this, Cabinet met and we really did a lot of discussions about the critical plans. There's a lot of literature about what's critical planning for colleges. We reviewed it all, and that's how these 7 came. But it can change over time. And I think with the transition of a new president coming, it probably is good to memorialize plans that you feel are critical for the functioning of this college to your executive team. So I think it was a good exercise in reviewing this, that we looked at all the plans and basically asked ourselves, are these the critical plans we need to move forward? And then what part of the governance structure, and that's another one, what part is it? The shared governance? Is it leadership? It should be both. Austin, in this case, it should be both for all your planning. So I thought it was a pretty good exercise to review this.
Okay. So I am going to suggest we move this policy forward to the consent agenda. All right. And that brings us to our last one, right? Just one more?
Yes.
BP 3280.
Right, and 3280 is about grants, and there's also not a current LCC policy here. So just in the interest of full disclosure, we actually added some language to this. There wasn't a dollar threshold in the OCCA policy. After talking to some of the folks on cabinet, we thought we might have to put some sort of a floor on this policy, because we didn't want to spend a lot of board time. I know the time is precious, and even though we do work sessions and board meetings, we didn't want to spend a lot of time talking about very small grants. Obviously, if you all want to take that out, it's totally understandable. But just understand that may mean that we're talking about $1,500 grants with you all that are fairly small potatoes compared to the overall budget of the college. So 25,000 was sort of the floor that we inserted. That could be changed if you prefer, but basically it just says that we're going to keep you informed of all grants in excess of 25,000, and it directs the president to establish procedures to apply for those grants and track the applications and the funds.
Mike?
Yeah, I don't feel the need to be informed of the grants. I do think that the president needs to do the rest of the stuff that you said, Michael. But I'm assuming the president would do that anyway. I'm not sure that we need this as a board policy, unless you tell me something I haven't thought about.
This was also a good practice recommendation, so I don't think it's necessary. It's not an accreditation. It's not legally required. It's not even legally advisable. I think this just comes down to what information does this board want? Do you want information about large grants, or do you just want to say, President, go forth and apply for all the grants we possibly can apply for and do a good job, a diligent job of tracking those and et cetera, and let us know if you need us to help. And if that's the case, then perhaps we don't need this.
Steve?
Yeah, I'm with Mike. I don't think that we need to enforce a rule that requires the president to tell us when we get free money. My guess is most presidents will naturally want to do that. And ours is no exception. So I see this one as kind of being self-managed. This is good news. When we get grants, presidents generally like to share good news. I don't think we have to do anything more than that.
Okay, so I'm hearing and seeing support for not sending this policy policy to the consent agenda. Is there anyone who objects to us not sending it? It's just to give space for an alternative voice. All right, well, we won't be sending that to the consent agenda. Okay, Mike, you got your plans for the board meeting?
I do. Thank you very much.
Great. Have a wonderful time.
Thanks.
All right, so let's go ahead and move on to our next discussion item for this evening, Wildland Fire Program, which Provost Jarrell is going to talk to us about.
Yeah, thank you, Chair Fragula, and good evening, everyone. It's nice to see you all. I hope you managed a nice long weekend with some family and friends. I feel it's nice to chat about something other than COVID with you all. So I'm really excited to talk a little bit about curriculum, which is something that I certainly enjoy spending a lot of time chatting about. This month we have 3 programs that we would like to and are seeking ultimately your approval for. One of them is a long-term, less than 1 year certificate, and that's the one in Wildland Fire Management. One of them is a revision of a current associate in applied science degree that we offer in unmanned aerial systems. And one of them is a continuation in a series of approvals that we ultimately need from you to seek the ability to offer an applied baccalaureate degree that's was passed by legislation in 2019 in Oregon for community colleges. Since we do have several new board members, I thought it'd be a good idea just to kind of give a quick overview of our curriculum approval process. I have a group of folks here to help with all of the different presentations and question and answers for you this evening over these 3 programs. But to get us started, I would like to ask Patrick Blaine. He's our Dean of Curriculum Assessment and Grants Development to give just a brief overview of the curriculum approval process here at Lane. It's different than at some other institutions that you all might be familiar with. And then what we can do is review these proposals one at a time. We have some of the primary stakeholders here, some faculty and other stakeholders that develop these programs that can give just a very brief introduction to each one, and then we can have a Q&A for each one after the little introduction. So Patrick, if you're on, can you get us started with a brief introduction, and then we'll run down the list here, Chair Fragula.
All right, thank you, Dr. Jarrell, and good evening, Chair Fragula, board members. It's a pleasure to be with you. And so as Dr. Jarrell mentioned, just a quick overview of our curricular process. When new proposals come to us initially, they either come to us in one of 2 ways. So either through faculty and deans identifying new or changed programs that they want to bring forward. And those are based on disciplinary needs in the fields, market or advisory committee feedback. Program review has a role in this, as well as our annual program check-ins with career technical education, because their fields tend to change more quickly, need to be more responsive. And then also any emerging needs or trends. The other way that curricular changes or programs can come through the pipeline is through institutionally identified and developed priorities. And a good example of that would be the applied baccalaureate that you have in your packet tonight. And so once that happens, the developers come to the Office of Curriculum and Assessment and meet with some combination of myself, Tammy Solman, who's our faculty curriculum coordinator, Deidre Lyons, who's our classified curriculum specialist, and discuss the preliminary proposal they have for courses or degrees, certificates, et cetera. And we also talk about possible development timelines. Often, especially for degree programs, it can be more than a year of development before you see the programs. At that point, if it's a go, then we begin a process of further investigation in the specific program. We look at institutional benchmarking, what programs exist around the state, around the region, what's our proposed market for these programs. We look at transferability, especially in your transfer disciplines where we're moving into the 4 years. So how is that going to work? Is it a good fit for where students are going and what they need? And We also bring in degree evaluators, the associate vice presidents of any given area, and really look at the overall fit and shape of the curriculum. We have 1,500 courses in the credit side, and up till recently, we had some 5,000 non-credit courses. And so looking at that as a whole and thinking about how things fit is really important. At that point, it goes into intensive proposal development, and we do either bi-weekly or monthly check-ins, depending on what's needed, the size of the program, the complexity. And the provost is then given eyes early on to get a heads up, make any suggestions, et cetera. Once that's done, it comes to the curriculum committee. And our committee is made up of 25 members. And those are from academic and student affairs, such as the registrar, student financial aid, and overwhelmingly members of the faculty from all the different divisions on campus. That committee, the committee reviews and discusses a course or degree proposal and votes on whether to move it on for approval or not. And any changes in that process are also forwarded to the developers. Then the proposal moves on to the associate vice presidents and the provost for approval. That's the real approval spot. If it passes through that, if it's a certificate or degree, then it's brought to the Board of Education for approval. And after that to the state and accreditor. If it's a course, it goes directly to the state after approval. And all of these things have to be completed in time for the catalog deadline, because we generally speaking need everything that's offered to be in the catalog for a given year, which means it has to be done by March or April. We publish our catalog in May. And so that means our last new proposals for any given coming year come in late January. And then finally, when all of the state board and provost approvals are finished, we enter the courses or programs into the catalog and banner for the following academic year, which begins in summer. And just a note on process, we were actually very happy to have the board request to make a shift in when proposals are coming and move through the working session as we're doing tonight. We think that will be helpful to us. In the case of the 3 proposals you have in front of you tonight, however, we weren't able to shift our production schedule. And so the 2 degree proposals or degree cert proposals will be moving through the curriculum committee next week and then make their way into the board packet for the December board meeting. And I see that Board Member Eister has a question, so I'll pause.
And that's a great clarification. Thank you, Patrick, because since we don't officially make decisions during work sessions, tonight's an opportunity for us to learn more and discuss, and we will be approving these if we so choose at the board meeting in mid-December. Mike.
Having spent my whole career in higher education, I understand that we have our way of doing things, but also understanding that there is a whole other part of the world out there that does things a little quicker than higher education. And I'm forced to ask myself, are there any of those steps that could possibly be removed from this process? If I were a person trying to create a new class, I don't know, I would be so discouraged to start out with from the very beginning. I'm not sure I'd ever get around to it. I guess if you get a PhD, you already have managed discouragement before, but I'm just wondering, does it have to be as rigorous as it is?
I would say that for the most part, yes, we're always continually looking at ways to streamline, and we do have proposals that come through as exceptions off cycle. However, off cycle courses and proposals ultimately can cause problems for students. And so from a student-centered framework, we have to stick to our development timeframe for the most part, but we are able to move quickly when the need presents itself, and we have recently.
Thanks.
Marge?
Yeah, so actually we have a workaround, and the workaround is non-credit. An example was I got a phone call from the labor commissioner who said, we need remember at the beginning of the pandemic, and she says, Marge, we need online programs ASAP that we could get jobs for cleaning and hospitals, et cetera. And she called Lane because Lane reacts so quickly, and we got it done. And it was a team effort, and it was offered in non-credit. So what you do, you can be very reactive to the workforce in non-credit. And then what you're doing is you're actually working through a lot of these steps that Patrick said, you're developing a curriculum, but you're doing it fast and you're doing it on the fly. And then that buys you the time, Mike, to actually go through the actual process, because that perfect example, that environmental services that could wind up being a credit certificate, and then maybe some sort of, I don't know if it would ever be a degree, but it would be for credit. So we have, believe me, I've done like massage therapy we have it at Lane in non-credit. So you can be reactive to the community.
Does part of the so I know certain grants can sometimes require certain aspects of that a course follows a certain development process or a certain development timeline in both the development of the program and in the post development. So does many of those steps because we could possibly qualify for grants during development and post development, or is there very few of those type of grants? Or are grants just coming to programs where they're needed?
Sure, I think I'm in a somewhat unique position to be able to answer that question because both curriculum and grants fall in my area. The quick answer is that we do pursue some grants that involve curricular development. The Title III grant that we received a couple of years ago is a good example of that. And it involved a revised first-year experience course. We also have a state grant called Strong Start that's intended to develop math skills and to sort of reform the beginning end of math and standardized courses, I think, a bit statewide in developmental education. So both of those are examples where we work with those, and it's always a chore to mate a grant schedule between application, receiving, and having to show results to the grantor. That can sometimes create pinch points, but for the most part, we're able to move things through effectively.
Paul?
Yeah, thank you. Yeah, we have been able to, I think, be responsive, but Mike, you hit on the key thing. It's really challenging to be real agile in some arenas, and we use the workarounds as best we can, as Dr. Hamilton mentioned. It's interesting, there are some other degrees that are legislated degrees and curriculum that comes legislated from the states. For example, we're developing what are called major transfer map, and those are Associate of Arts or Associate of Science transfer degrees. Those are legislated, so there's a little bit less back and forth that can occur simply because there's strict legislation around what those degrees must look like. But regardless, we're bound within a particular area like credit. We must follow a process. Unlike the universities, courses and curriculum don't go to the state for approval there, but at community colleges, they do. So we're still bound by this process, and the board requires board approval before we go to the state. We require state approval before we go to our accrediting agency if we need to do that step too. So we have these in place, and we're developing processes that allow us to move through them as quickly as we can. But the steps kind of all sort of are mandated for us to be there for the most part.
Great. So thank you for that overview of the curriculum approval process. That'll be very helpful because we're going to look at 3 different certificates or baccalaureates here. And my understanding is we will need to approve all of them. Is that correct, Paul?
Yeah, that's correct. Because they're programs, they will require approval. The last one is we've already talked about it in 30,000 foot of view, and we're just getting a little bit closer at this point now. There are multiple steps that we have to go through for that one. But yeah, you have the smorgasbord of them here. Really, like I said, we have a short, less than 1 year certificate, very focused, and that's the wildfire management one. If you want to tackle that one first,
Let's start with that one. That sounds great.
yeah, that would be great. So we have a number of folks here that can help answer questions about that. I think if we can give just a high-level overview, Patrick is Rick Glover. He's a faculty member in environmental science. Is he here to give a quick little intro and then?
Here.
He is here, yes.
Okay, Rick. Good to see you, Rick.
Thanks for your time, board members. And yeah, just to give a brief overview of the Wildland Fire Management Program. We kind of developed this to address the obvious regional need for new wildland firefighters, and also to approach it from an ecosystem management approach. So really, we're having a real focus on fuel load reduction, particularly through controlled burning. So it's unique in that aspect. We've connected our efforts to regional high schoolers, so their field day is going to connect to the regional high school programs, and we really hope to use it as kind of a bridge between regional high schools and Lane. As it was said, it was a less than 1 year certificate. Our goal is to get students in this program trained up and ready to get out by spring. And if you look at the details, we're trying to make it so that it ends kind of midway through spring term. So as the fire season, before the fire season really ramps up. It provides National Wildland Fire Coordinating Group qualifications through instruction, but also we want to encourage existing qualified wildland firefighters to get credit for prior learning, reducing the credit load significantly. And really kind of our overall goal is to help develop new ecologically conscious firefighters and to promote controlled burning, as well as to provide professional development for existing firefighters.
Hey, any questions or comments about the wildfire management certificate? Austin.
I'm really supportive of it, both for personal reasons and for workforce development reasons. Questions I have in regards to, well, two things. One involves grants. The other one involves concept of guaranteed employment. So the first one around grants, with the infrastructure bill, there is about $250 million that'll be available for training programs like this, as well as like hazardous waste and things along those lines, post-fire and so forth. And so I just wanted to kind of note that's something that maybe we should pursue in regards to the certificate program. Second thing is that what would be necessary to essentially line up jobs with Forest Service, Forestry Department, private firefighting companies that while they essentially before they even get the certificate completed in the spring, they have at least some job offers, some interviews done, things of that nature. Is there ways that we can promote that? Because when there's that guarantee of employment after the fact, that really like helps with enrollments, and the students wanting to be active and involved in the certificate program.
That's a great question, Austin. And unfortunately, with the federal hiring programs that go through USA Jobs, I think there's a limit there to the guaranteed hiring. However, we've kind of addressed this in our program through the seminar course that they would take in the fall. So the role of that course is to kind of synthesize the information that they're learning within the framework of wildland fire. On top of that is to let them know the hiring schedules. So with wildland fire, they should have already applied for next year's fire season and fire crew in early November, right? So that would be one of our goals, is to help them understand, okay, you need this many hours of volunteer or work in order to qualify to become a Forest Service wildland firefighter, bring in those hiring managers to talk to them about the hiring process and to guide them through that application process early on. We haven't gotten to the point of getting some of the private contractors on board for some of that employment. And I think part of that is just because in the process of developing this, it's been really rapid.
Understood. Is there any like limitations with the state, like state forestry department, as far as like guaranteed hiring possibilities?
So that all goes through the USA Jobs hiring framework, which is a federal employment framework. So it is very, very regimented and very, very, but from what we've heard from most hiring agencies is they are clamoring for qualified firefighters. And we're really hoping that it's kind of, it will show a really high percentage of students in this program that do get jobs and end up on the fire line within that first year.
Understood. Thank you.
And I also wanted to make the note, I really appreciate a note about grants and the expansion into hazardous waste cleanup and things. I think there's some expansion possibilities for this. It's important to make sure we get the program in place.
Absolutely. Thank you.
Any other questions or comments? Okay. Well, oh, go ahead, Angela.
Thank you. Sounds like a great program, also very supportive. I'm curious, does it require a change in staffing or faculty, or is it, would it sort of leverage existing faculty and staff?
There are a couple of qualified faculty that currently teach part-time at the college. And there are a group of interested community members through Tim Inglesby, who runs the FUC Firefighters United for Ethics and Ecology. And so there's a group of individuals in the region who are really coordinated towards controlled burning and wildland fuels management. And I think we'll have no problem finding instructors for individual classes. I think the hardest thing will be making sure that the instructors are qualified for the classes, for the industry certification.
Paul?
Yeah, thank you. And I'll just add on that, Angela, I think if you're getting at, the really only additional cost to this program, Rick, who's speaking here, is a full-time faculty member in environmental science, would serve in the capacity as the program coordinator, if you will, for this program. The unique courses, the fire courses, the unique courses, we would staff for the most part, I believe, with part-time faculty. I don't know that we have any current part-time faculty that would meet the minimum qualifications for those courses. We may, I'm not sure, but we would recruit locally for part-time faculty to staff those courses.
Steve?
I'm also very supportive of the program. Nice to see you, Rick. I do have a question though. So it sounds like the program is, predicated on the hope, right? There's no way to know until, a year or two from now, but it's predicated on the hope that students who complete the program will become more competitive for those existing jobs than those who don't have a credential like that, this credential or one like it. So, that's a reasonable bet. I'm willing to put, institutional resources behind it. But let's just say a year or two or three from now, it doesn't pan out, right? That the hiring agencies don't see the value in it that we do, despite our best attempts and all the rest. I'm just curious a little bit about, the then what, how have you all thought about how much time do you put into something like this when it is predicated on the competitiveness that we hope for at the end?
Well, go ahead, Rick.
I think that's where the program management part of it comes into play. And I I think myself as not be like, to take a step back, I've had to learn a lot about wildland firefighting. I haven't come to the role of helping develop this program from a position of intense knowledge of this field. I've done a lot of learning in it. And I think part of the value of having myself as an outsider is, like, I've asked critical questions about it. We've looked at this kind of process proposal as trying to really trying to respond to the high school's need for, or the high school's promotion of, or movement forward on some of these proposals. So some of this too is a piece of, like, how do we get high schoolers that are getting some of this training connected to Lane as well. But yeah, I think asking those questions, if students aren't getting employment afterwards, then that's a real program management piece. And that's something that we look at during program review and those and assessment.
Paul, had you wanted to add to that? I see Marge has her hand up as well.
No, I was just going to comment. The Rick touched on it right at the end. I mean, we would look at and evaluate these things through program review, annual assessment of the program. There's always a risk at starting any program. I do think, though, that for a number of reasons, this has promise. I mean, one, I think the need is there, as Rick articulated before, for trained firefighters in this area. I think the other thing that it does, and I've been in contact with a lot of folks locally, it pays homage to the natural resources that we have here and the industry that had been here for so long, and in natural resource management, a venue. And I think that that's really good too. And I think that there's a lot of interest in being able to protect and maintain that connection to the land that's here. And I think that this is something that really does that as well.
Marge?
Yeah, I actually supervised a fire program for many, many years before I came here. The job market in the insurance industry is huge. And with this kind of a background, I'm looking at the labor supply demand that you wrote up, Rick. You did a good job. That's probably even under, and I looked up while we were talking, starting salaries, or mean salaries, I should say, is in the 60s, but you can make well into the hundreds working for insurance companies. So the market's there, but the ultimate answer, Steve, is we evaluate these programs every year or two, and when they're no longer necessary, they're no longer necessary. The good news is a lot of our teachers have multiple roles, and the way Rick, for example, started in environmental science. I mean, that's the kind of thing we would be looking at and tracking. But I happen to know the insurance industry, inspectors, prevention specialists. There's a big market for that all over the country.
I'm supportive.
Thank you. So I am also supportive. I'm guessing based on the current historical, ecological period we find ourselves in, it's important. I would like to note that many of the firefighters who fight the forest fires locally are actually part of fire departments, that our fire departments are mobilized to fight fires when we have wildfires. And the firefighters union has started an apprenticeship program, and they critically need people. And this feels like a really great pre-apprenticeship opportunity. And I would really encourage you to connect with them, because those are very good paying jobs. And they critically need young people who want to get involved in firefighting as a profession. So I'm going to go ahead and move us on. Thank you very much, Rick. It sounds like there's a lot of support for that, and it's been really well thought through, and we will see that for approval at the board meeting. Paul, did you want to introduce the aviation program?
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you, Chair Fragola. The next program is revision, a substantial revision of a current associate and applied science that we offer here in aviation unmanned aircraft systems, drones. A little slightly different focus we're taking here, again, based on some feedback from industry and advisory committees. I think, is Solomon Singer here to give
He
a...
is here,
Oh,
yes.
great, thanks. Solomon, if you're on, you can unmute yourself and give a brief intro, and then we'll have some time for Q&A.
Very good. Thank you so much, Chair Fragala and the board, and thank you. I am very excited actually about this new UAS program shift. And the reason for that is because the industry is strongly focused on UAS maintenance now. And especially with drone deliveries, with all sorts of different more critical infrastructure being developed around unmanned aircraft, the need for standardized maintenance and aircraft grade standards is essential. And I'm actually an FAA safety team drone pro, and so I'm kind of connected with the FAA and how they are interpreting these new issues that are coming up. And this is a critical issue, which this new sort of shift of the UAS program is going to help with. And I think the important thing to focus on here is that we're actually on the cutting edge of a new industry here, where there will be standards that will be developed outside of this, right? And so we're going to actually be hopefully working with some of the key industry partners here that we have currently working with to develop new standards as part of our curriculum. So what's really nice about this is it's really just actually a shift from the existing UAS degree that we offer in a new direction, which is strongly supported by the industry and our advisory committee. So the first half of the degree would be basically a compressed version of what we currently offer as a UAS commercial aerial systems or unmanned aircraft systems operator. And then the second year we'll be moving into that maintenance focus where we deal with aircraft systems, subsystems, aviation grade practices, including manufacture in-house of a custom vertical takeoff and landing drone that can actually be used for first responder use. So I just wanted to mention, by the way, I'm a firefighter as well, and I'm also a search and rescue UAS operator for the sheriff's office here in Lane County, and they both need, desperately an operator that can have the equipment to go out on call. And this can actually be a really exciting opportunity for the students to actually participate in on-call situations. So I feel like the integration, not only, by the way, with the previous program that we just talked about, I'm in full support of that. And I think Rick is doing a great job with the firefighting side. And I think if we actually coordinated with them too, that could add another cutting edge level to not only what we do, but also to what the firefighters have actually trained with UAS. And that is a huge cutting edge approach that everyone is in huge demand for. In fact, they were even using the little fire bombs to backburn from drones on this last big fire here, the Gales fire this last summer. So that type of, the industry is in huge demand for UAS operations. And so we can integrate that with this new degree and also provide these all-in-one operators that are also trained and educated in aviation standard maintenance for UAS, which is going to be a huge, huge important part of the industry moving forward. So this is really just a shift, but what's also nice about this is it actually has stackable certificates. So moving through the degree, they'll actually get stackable CPCs. So the first year is an unmanned aircraft operator CPC. Then there's an autopilot CPC, and that's huge. That just alone is enough to get these people hired across the industry. There's thousands and thousands of jobs that actually demand autopilot experience, and very few colleges, if any, across the entire US even offer that. So we're going to stand apart from everyone else, not only in the Pacific Northwest, but in the West Coast region and even in the country. There's only 2 other colleges that are teaching UAS maintenance in any form, and we are going to be even better than that. So it really makes us stand apart. And I think that's a really exciting approach because right now we're getting huge demand. It's going to even increase further the more we start seeing, especially with the pandemic support and things like that for remote delivery. The drone experience is going to become larger and larger, and the infrastructure and manpower behind that is going to be even bigger. So I think it's a move in the right direction for the industry. It's a move in the right direction for the students, and it's a move in the right direction, honestly, for our community as well, because we'll be offering more and more community support.
Thank you. I see Austin has his hand up. Austin?
All right. I'm supportive of this program. Again, both for personal and workforce reasons. I like drones. They're cool. Yeah, I'm going to ask a similar question as I did last time in the concept of like, how can we figure out how to make these programs where there's guaranteed employment afterwards? Again, it sounds like there's a huge demand for work and employment excuse me, for this industry. And I was just wondering, where are some opportunities for us to have certain employers that we can line up for these students so that before they even graduate, they have an interview, they have a potentially have a job offer lined up and so forth. I think we should definitely, as we institute these new programs, especially programs that are on the cutting edge like this one, we definitely should heavily consider those, like lining up that kind of like guaranteed employment after the fact. So anyway, and this is just a broad overall message that I want for our programs and especially our new programs.
Absolutely. So, you know, the way I'm approaching that is we're developing, I'm aggressively developing industry partnerships, and we've actually had several companies donate equipment. They're very excited to partner with us on developing or testing their new equipment. And so those types of industry contacts, especially in Oregon, you know, what's really amazing about Oregon is there's over 45 drone companies that are like military contract level drone companies that work and hire in Oregon. So of the whole country, we're absolutely the biggest state for that, which is pretty amazing. So I'm also developing actually a separate website, which I'm hoping to incorporate into this program as well. But right now, based on the resources I'm developing myself to help with this, it's OregonUAV.com, and it's actually it's not published yet, but I'm working on the back end of it. And so it's going to feature all of the UAS companies in Oregon and have contacts for the students to contact the hiring team. So not only will it have like a feature list for all the drone industries, because if you just try to go search yourself right now for all the drone companies in Oregon, it's actually kind of hard to find. So I'm going to network with them and talk with them about this and have them featured on the website. And then that's actually a hiring portal. So because this industry is so new, there's jobs all over the country. We have a professional development lab actually currently being offered, FT124F. And that's actually, it gets them set up with LinkedIn. It gets them a good resume, right? We're developing their professional sort of side on the internet. And that has helped several of our students get hired. So, you know, that type of direct contact and access to the industry and having that sort of communication and constant interaction with the community in the US industry is what we're doing for that specifically. But because it's such a fast moving industry, we don't have that sort of long-standing hiring pathway developed. Like, for example, some of these older ones like manufacturing or construction technologies, right? They've got places that just hire them straight off, and they've had that throughput existing already. So we've had several of our graduates already being hired by like places like Intel for drone photography work and stuff like that. So it's really, I mean, easy to get jobs in the industry, but we're actively developing networks and connections and resources available for the students so that they can get that direct hire potential, especially in Oregon itself. I mean, they shouldn't have to leave the state ideally, right? So that we're in the process of it, but it's definitely an important consideration.
Any other questions or comments? Steve?
Solomon, I just want to applaud your enthusiasm. I really appreciate it, and I'm supportive. If there are more reasons than just your enthusiasm, but I absolutely support your entrepreneurial spirit and enthusiasm. I do have a question. You said at some point that there is some component in this stackable set of degrees that is not exactly unique, but close to unique at or would be at LCC. Only one or two other schools around the country, you said, are currently offering that. So I imagine in that case, that will attract people potentially from all over the country who want that opportunity and can't find it where they currently live. They'll have to make a decision of whether it's worth moving to Oregon for some period of time to do those courses. I'm wondering if what we're doing to make that easier for them, like, are we offering as much of this online and perhaps a concentrated summer intensive to do the stuff that has to happen on site? What are we doing to make it easier for people to make that decision to uproot from wherever they are and take this relatively short term but highly desirable opportunity?
That's a great consideration, and we're definitely expecting a huge amount of interest from across the country on this. But unfortunately, with the UAS program, there's a limit to how much we can teach online, just simply for the fact that this is a hands-on application, and for the quality of instruction, which I call actually critical instruction. So it's really actually similar to aviation technology, where they need to know these skills, right? This is a safety critical factor that they know these skills, right? So it's not just book knowledge, it's not just written test preparation. This is actual field skills which have critical implications. So because of that critical type of training method, it's essential that some of these courses, especially the hands-on labs, are actually hands-on and actually are being taught on actual equipment. So because of that, it sort of limits some of the remote access. However, any of the classes that we are able to offer remotely, we are offering remotely. And especially because of the safety factor with COVID right now as well, we've had to transition some of those classes online that traditionally were not. And so in that situation, we have made that switch, and we'll probably continue to offer those online for the ones that we can, simply for that reason, right? Because it's already online. However, I totally agree with you. It's a big factor. And some of the stackable certificates, like the autopilot certificate, for example, can theoretically be taught online. And so some of them are sort of more tailored towards that, and some of them aren't. So like, for example, the GIS CPC, for example, is more focused on GIS. That can actually be done, I believe, pretty much remotely, except for a couple of labs. And they can maybe, work around that or come for, a summer term and do those labs or something. But yeah, it's a consideration that we're trying to do. But again, we're sort of fighting that critical training problem of needing to have them hands-on and having those skills assessed in person.
Thank you. I do want to move us on to our third program. Austin, you had your hand up.
Just really briefly, I'm thinking of international students and the international students that we have come on campus. Like, so what's the kind of opportunity? I mean, obviously there's a nationwide opportunity, but like international, like, so would this be something that can also attract international students to be able to have accreditation that they could bring back to their country of origin? Or like, what do you see are some of the possibilities there?
Absolutely. In fact, we have several international students right now in our program. And the benefit about this really is that the type of training and the type of instruction that we do is not, it's country agnostic, really. And what's nice about that is, for example, ArduPilot, which is one of the world's most popular open source autopilots that we train with, is globally recognized and globally in demand. So a lot of the equipment and a lot of the systems, like, for example, I'm actually working with some leaders in the transport industry in Indonesia. And Indonesia is actively seeking to improve their, UAS regulations. And they're actually using me as a resource for that. And they're interested in possibly sending some people here to get trained because they simply don't have any college in Indonesia that teaches UAS. So those kind of things can definitely be an approach. And I think the real limitation on that is advertising. If we let them know it works and it's available, they will come.
Great. Thank you very much, Coleman. Paul, let's move us on to the baccalaureate.
Yeah, thank you. And I'm so glad that you got to hear from both Rick and Solomon there. We have some great faculty working here that do really good work. So I appreciate all their efforts on this regard. So our last program that we want to present to you and ultimately we'll seek one more step of approval in the process for is the Applied Baccalaureate. In 2019, the state Senate Bill 3 authorized community colleges to be able to offer baccalaureate degrees, applied baccalaureate degrees. And these are by definition designed to further advance someone's knowledge in a very specific field, lead to greater employability or upskilling. And as such, they are career technical education degrees for the most part. We came to you all in February, I believe it was, at the February board meeting. The first step in that approval process is to be able to get board authorization to explore the degree. You've granted that to us in February. We've been exploring. We have at this point submitted a statement of need as part of the process for a program. And our program in this case was an applied baccalaureate or a bachelor's of applied science in business, business administration. That now is submitted to HEC. If it's approved at their next meeting, I believe that they'll probably hear it in January. If it's authorized at that point, then it will enter into a 90-day waiting period where we'll basically have notice and comment periods about this degree for other institutions in the state to look at, to talk about, competition and things like that. And we've already been in conversations with a few 4 years that offer business degrees, certainly already about the overlap or lack of overlap between what we're proposing and what might already be offered. One of the steps that we need in the approval process, the next step, the step that we'll be coming to you with in a couple of weeks for approval, is the approval and authorization to deliver and offer this new degree type, this applied baccalaureate. Basically, that will allow us to grant the degree type, not the specific degree yet. That will come to you later when it's developed more fully after the statement of need period. But this will allow us to be able to grant the degree and will allow us to teach courses that would lead to fulfillment of the degree, right? So what we're asking for in this continuation of approvals is that next at the business board meeting in a couple of weeks, we'll ask for approval to grant the degree type and to be able to teach those courses. We'll provide you with some more information at that point. That will then allow us to further develop the degree that we'll be seeking pending approval from the Higher Education Coordinating Commission. And at that point, before we can submit the degree to the state, that specific degree, the program will come to you fleshed out with all the courses and more details about impact and cost and all of those kinds of things much later. I don't know, Patrick might be able to provide an estimate of a timeline for that, but that probably wouldn't occur until April, I believe, March or April March at the earliest, probably for that. So that's where we are with this. If there are any questions about the overall process or whatever, we're happy to address them. But right now, we just want to be able to get your approval to be able to grant that degree type. Patrick?
Yeah, really quickly, we're expecting to see early drafts of the full proposal in January, and those will be moving through curriculum committee and the consultative process. And I would estimate sometime around the April or May timeframe, we'd be bringing the full proposal to the board.
Thank you. So we're here to answer any questions if you have them. I know some of you have heard this spiel before, but a few of you weren't board members when we brought this before.
I have Austin and then Steve.
I'll just keep mine short and just say that I'm really supportive of it. And this is especially useful for some of our international students and programs. So
thank you.
Steve?
Yeah, Paul, quick question. Does this mean that LCC will get in the business of offering a small number of 300 and 400 level courses?
We will, Steve. The courses that would be required would be those upper division technical courses and general education courses to fill out the degree requirements for a bachelor's degree. So yes, we would be offering 300 and 400 level courses initially, specifically for just this degree, but we're wanting to build a degree that we feel is applicable to a broad number of programs that we currently teach, and that students could come into this degree from a variety of associate degrees already and feed into this applied business degree. Yeah, it's exciting. It opens it up to a lot of new folks that wouldn't see themselves doing this
which
It
is really
sounds
good.
kind of like a watershed moment, honestly.
Yeah, I love it.
Me too.
Marge?
Yeah, so other colleges across the country have been doing this and they're doing it well. And the trick to being successful is to not compete with your local and state university. They do what they do very well. We have to do the applied piece, the CTE. And if we do a good job, we'll be doing it collaboratively with our university partners. So I think I'm looking forward to this. There's an awful lot of opportunity here, but there's a lot to talk about later. You know, how do you price this? There's just a lot of interesting things that Paul will bring to the table later.
Great. And I have myself in the queue. I'm going to ask a question that applies to all three of the programs we just discussed. They sound very needed, very worthwhile. And I'm wondering what are the ways that we are going to effectively market these programs and make sure that our community and people who need to increase their job skills or look for other opportunities of employment are going to learn about the programs and opportunities here at LCC.
Yeah, I'll speak generally. I mean, we are developing a targeted marketing plan moving forward. I do see these programs, especially the applied baccalaureate, being something that we would really focus on down the road when we get closer to that point of being able to offer it. The goal would be to be able to offer that one fall of 23. So we're still a couple years out for that one, but we certainly would be, as we're in the process and it looks promising, we would certainly be leveraging pipelines into that already and advertising for that. And then I think, you know, the other one is just simply being out there in the media with these programs and these degree programs. And I know that we've not had a real strategic marketing plan around specific programs before, but that's something that's currently under development. And I see these programs being in that suite of programs that are being actively marketed.
Great, thank you. Any other questions or comments from board members? If not, I'll move us on to our final discussion item. Okay, so we will see these at our board meeting for approval, and I'm going to move us on to the presidential search. Thank you very much. And
yeah, thank you. I appreciate the conversations.
Thank you, Paul, and also thank you to Rick Glover, Patrick Blaine, and Solomon Singer. Let's see, we're going to have an update on the presidential search, and Deborah Butler is going to provide that to us. Hi, Deborah.
Hi, thank you. It's so great to hear all this robust discussion about academic programs, new academic programs. So very positive for me just to listen while I waited for my turn here. And I have provided you a short summary of an update of the presidential search in your board packet. We've been working very closely with ACCT Search and have been taking their recommendations about information that should be on the website, where the search should be promoted within our college website and web ecosystem. So we've been trying to work with that and make sure everything is included that should be included. We've also shared the posting pretty broadly with our search committee, with our with cabinet. I've shared it with a number of other folks here in the college who committed to do some personal outreach or were interested in doing some outreach within their professional communities. Jill Wakefield, who is our consultant with ACCT Search, reports that they have made contact with or have sent messages to at least 14,000 contacts in higher education. They've also been having face-to-face meetings or Zoom meetings with leaders from different colleges and trying to identify and reach out to folks who they believe would be potential candidates who have the skills and the background that we're looking for at Lane. So they've been actively recruiting. In paid advertisements, we have advertised in the three sort of big ones, big locations that community colleges normally advertise high-level executive positions. Obviously, this is an area where the landscape has changed a little bit in the last couple of years. It used to be that we spent a lot of money on advertising when there was an executive level position, and that has shifted a little bit. And now we don't really do print at all because people don't really read print as much anymore. So we make sure that it's included in the bigger ones. It's also, being personally recruited through ACCT. But we did also include some additional publications that we have advertised executive level searches before, and that are specific, especially to communities of color in higher education. And so we're hopeful that that will help spread the word, especially to our passive job seekers who aren't necessarily looking for presidency, but might be really excited by the opportunity to work at Lane. In terms of internal communications, we're at kind of a lull point right now, where the application process is open, and it will be open until January 18th, I believe. So we're sort of in the middle of the application process. We're anticipating that many potential applicants will be applying during the winter break, because many of these folks are going to be people who are working in higher ed and will have that downtime during the winter break, and some time to think about it and to apply during that time. And we've also been told that most of the applications will come in the last couple of weeks of the search. And so Jill is confident that we have a robust outreach happening right now, and recruitment is looking good and exactly what we expected. But we're still thinking that most of the applications are going to come in late in the search. So I'm glad to answer any questions you might have.
Any questions? Okay, thank you for that update, Deborah. And that is a good kind of segue into future meeting dates and agenda items. So our next and last board meeting. Oh, Mike, did you have a question?
Well, I know this isn't on the agenda and it may have been provided elsewhere and I just don't remember, but I wonder if we could just get a 10-second update on where we are with returning to in-person class, if we have any more information.
Marge?
Yes, I'll ask Paul and Richard to chime in, but basically it was painfully slow for winter, and then we had an upswing, like a real uptick week to week. So I'm kind of hoping that that's a message that people are waking up like after Thanksgiving. Paul or Richard, you want to jump in?
Yeah, I'm sorry, I missed that. Marge, were you talking about enrollment?
Yeah, we were very down. We're scary down year to year.
Yeah,
Well,
interesting.
I was actually talking about in-person classes, meeting in person.
Oh, meeting in person. I'm sorry.
Yeah.
Thank you. All right, Paul, why don't you talk about that?
Yeah, so for fall term, are you talking about for fall or winter, Mike? I'm sorry.
Well, it's whatever's coming up next. If there's any
Winter's coming up, right?
Yeah.
So just to kind of put in perspective, so fall term, about 37% of all of our students, credit students, had something scheduled in person for fall. And I think that's artificially high because of shifting to remote at the last minute, not having things coded properly. So I don't trust that number. That's kind of, I believe, a high. It's probably more like about 25%. Current enrollments where we are right now, Marge is right, we're tracking down still, but we did just see a bump this early this week. So I'm hoping that students got past Thanksgiving, they see, oh, I'm going to pass or whatever. And so now they're ready to invest in winter term. For winter term, we are currently, I checked the data this morning, 57% of all registered students have some in-person component. And most of that is significantly in person, right? It might be a full in-person class, just like pre-pandemic, or it could be a hybrid course where about 50% of the instruction is in person. So it's significantly more for winter. We're really working on not only more significant in-person engagement for instruction for students. We know what's important in getting them here and keeping them here are those engagement opportunities outside of the classroom too. So we have a lot more planned in-person student support tutoring, counseling, health clinic, all of those things are going to be back. The library with more significant in-person opportunities for students.
Well, none of us can anticipate what Omicron is going to do, but this is the question I get asked most frequently when I bump into people. What's the status of in-person classes? I don't know about other board members, but that's the most frequent question I get when I bump into people.
And let me tell you too that, like, I mean, one thing I feel really good about is that, and you all should feel good about because of your efforts on the vaccination requirement. We are, as a campus, whether you're talking about in person or just all students and employees in general, 93% vaccinated. 93% vaccinated. I mean, Lane Community College is the safest place in the community to be right now, right? And on top of that, we are still, we still have indoor mask mandates. We're social distancing where we can. We have plexiglass in place. So it really is a safe environment, and we should celebrate that, right? Because we can maintain that student engagement. And I know we all have put in a lot of hours and taken a lot of heat for this, but this is the benefit to it. We are, thanks to you, a fully vaccinated campus with greater than 90% vaccination across the board. Unbelievable. So I appreciate that.
Rosie?
So were I your PR functionary, I would be seeking out feature coverage from local news operations about what you just said. Lane is just about the safest place you can be right now. And it won't do to just send a news release. What you need to do is have your new, don't we have a new marketing
We do.
on staff? It's her, correct? Her job is to have a relationship with editors and news staff throughout the county and beyond. So I would like to see some feature coverage of what you just described.
Yes.
Okay. So in moving back to future meeting dates and items, our next and our last board meeting of 2021 will be December 15th. We are hoping that at that meeting, we will be able to have some more information on redistricting. Potentially, we will be having a public meeting and be making a decision that evening, have the opportunity to make a decision that evening on maps. It is very dependent on whether or not the county makes a decision tonight. So that's kind of where we're at with redistricting. So be looking for more information about that soon. And then
when you say public meeting, do you mean in person?
No,
okay.
Like a opportunity for public input, like like we need to have not just our usual comment period. We also need to have an opportunity, like a public hearing for people to provide input on it.
Thanks.
So we'll see how that goes. And beginning in 2022, we'll switch to our new schedule for work sessions and board meetings will flip. So our board meetings are going to be the first Wednesday and our work sessions are going to be the third Wednesday. That does not apply to January though. In January, we have a board meeting on the 12th and we have our board retreat on January 22nd. I also wanted to, in relationship to the update on the presidential search, remind you that on February 19th and 20th, we've committed as a board to do interviews for our semifinalists in the search. Those are going to be conducted in Zoom. Whether or not we begin to hold board meetings in person. And the reason for that is to provide access to a broader reach of candidates. So that'll be starting to narrow down the process. So those are future meeting dates and agenda items. And Rosie, I see your hand is still up. Did you have, oh, no, okay. Anything for the good of the order? All right, then I am going to adjourn this work session of the LCC Board of Education. Have a good evening, everyone.
Good night, everybody.